can meet with you.
No.
Oh, gee, you said no? Oh, I'm gonna have to beat you.
We're good. Okay. Hello, everyone. We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order for the Parks and Recreation Advisory Commission for Monday, January 13th, 2025. Can you hear me now? Yeah. Okay. So we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order for Monday, January 13th, 2025. Starting with roll call, position 1, Carrie Stuckey, that's me. Shane Carden.
Here.
Kate Rose is absent today. Eric Dubzinski.
Here.
Tom Jones.
Here.
Stefania Huerta. I believe she is going to be absent today as well. Vicky Biggs. Here. And Councilmember Eric Marshall.
Here.
Okay, so we will move on to item number 2, our annual organizational items. Mikhail, did you want to go over that a little bit?
Sure. Good morning, Mikhail Finkel, Executive Services Director. So at the beginning of each year, we put this on the advisory board agendas. There's a time, a couple of the items are setting your calendar for the upcoming year, if you want to talk about any changes to it. And then there's election of the chair and vice chair. If you decide to make changes, this is the time to do that. And then there's just the training certificate reminders, just if you just to get me a copy of your certificate. Once you turn it in or take the training, it's valid for 4 years. So,
Thank you. Setting the meeting schedule for 2025, is everyone okay with continuing the meetings second Monday at 10 a.m.? Do we need a motion for these?
no,
Not
not unless you want to change it.
Okay, so we're all in agreement to keep that the same? Okay, 2025 chair and vice chair. Did we want to make changes to that at all or remain the same?
I recommend we remain the same.
Okay,
I second.
okay. Everyone in favor of that? All right. So that will remain the same for chair and vice chair. And then Mikhail went over the training certificate reminder. So item number 3, approval of the agenda. Were there any questions, comments, changes to the agenda? Item F, we're going to remove from the agenda today for Adopt a Park because Brandon is out. So we'll move that to a future meeting. Any other comments or questions?
I move to approve the agenda as written with the change to scratching item F.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Next, moving on to the approval of the minutes for our meeting of December 9th, 2024. Did we have any questions, comments, changes?
I make a motion to approve the meeting minutes from December 9th as written.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that is approved. Next, we will move on to item number 5, public comment. During this time, citizens may comment on subjects of interest not on the agenda or agenda items. Do we have anyone present that would like to make a public comment today? Yes, go ahead.
Well, I know that I can't do this in 3 minutes. I wrote this up this morning. The main thing is on the fee schedule, you have a tournament fee schedule. And that tournament fee schedule is $25
Hey,
per hour for the
Carrie,
field.
since this is an agenda item, why don't we,
Yeah, since this is
We'll
an
do comment
agenda
on it.
item, why don't we move the discussion about this to the,
Okay.
when we talk about that
We can
agenda
do
item?
that If we're allowed to say something. But anyway,
Yeah.
I just put it in writing because I'm always better in writing than.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, that's fine.
So that you can refer to it later.
Perfect, thank you. Yeah, that'll be item C on our agenda, so we can discuss it during that agenda item. Thank you, Rita. Did we have anyone else present from the public that would like to make a public comment on any items not on the agenda?
Well, not on the, I'm also
Okay, sure. All right. Okay, so seeing nothing else for that, we will move on to our discussion items. Item A, we have the 110th anniversary project of the Gary Oak Harbor Gary Oak Society. Thank you.
Hey, good morning, everybody. My name's Kyle. I'm on the board of the Oak Harbor Gary Oak Society. I'm one of the founding members and also the director of special projects. Let's see. Hey, do you think it'd be possible to please have the presentation on that screen as well? No. Okay. Well, maybe I'll pivot this just so I can refer to my notes on the slide. So, as you are all aware, 2025 is the City of Oak Harbor's 110th anniversary of incorporation. Of course, this region has had thousands of years of human habitation, but for our city and for our incorporation, we're celebrating its 110th anniversary. And so the Gary Oak Society would love to continue our strong spirit of partnership. We too are celebrating an anniversary. It's our 10th year. So we were started on the city's 100th year. So we are celebrating our 10th year and we want to continue to partner. And we've got some really cool projects. So just a brief agenda for us today. I'll give you a quick overview, talk about some of the projects, and then talk about benefits and publicity of these projects. If you've got questions at any time, feel free to interrupt me. I'd be happy to share or answer any questions in line and then as well as after the presentation. So a quick overview, right? So as we talked about, Gary Oak Society celebrating 10 years. We're really proud of that. It's a lot of work, a lot of sweat and time of all volunteers to keep this organization running. So we want to celebrate. Like I mentioned, the City of Oak Harbor was incorporated in 1915, so 110 years. The Gary Oak Society, one of our biggest first projects was collaborating with the city to plant the Centennial Grove. That's out there on the highway near where they built the U-Haul. And so we're celebrating 10 years too. So we want to continue to build on that partnership, and we've got some really cool projects and ideas that we're hoping to accomplish next year. So let's see. All right, so let's get into the projects. These kind of fall into a couple broad categories. Planting oaks, of course, priority number one, doing some interpretation and then recognizing Oak Harbor's history. So what we'd like to do, we'd love to plant another phase of oaks at Centennial Grove. So when Centennial Grove was initially envisioned, it was designed to have multiple phases. And so we basically planted phase one, right, 10 years ago. But there's still lots of room out there, and we hope to be able to plant an additional phase. The Gary Oak Society would love to donate the materials, the seedlings, and acorns to be able to do that. And of course, again, those additional phases when the grove was first envisioned. We know that this grove has been really positively received. Of course, community members initially had donated a fairly large amount of money to buy sapling trees, and those came out of a nursery. Since then, we as a group have continued to develop, and we are now able to grow our own seedlings, and then planting acorns we always encourage too. So they'll all be locally sourced. There's still a ton of room available out there, and the last time we did this, King 5 News picked up the story, and the Whitby News Times did it, so we really see this as also an opportunity to get some great publicity for the work. And there's Sue Carr-Hollis, former council member, there on the right, and then my dad was planting too. So that was back 10 years ago. Time flies. So that's kind of our big planting project that we'd love to partner with, and it felt right 10 years later, right, 10 years after the centennial, planting another phase. All right, we know, working with Brian and Brandon, that the city tree plan is coming up, right? We know that's currently in progress in bid. The Gary Oak Society, we'd like to think we were instrumental. We certainly wrote letters of support to help the city win the grants that it needed to be able to do that. So we'd really like to be some key stakeholders in helping to shape that plan. We are your tree-focused nonprofit, so it seems right that we would be participating. So we'd really love to be kind of on the ground floor to help shape the plan. We can also help to get the public participating in the plan too, if that's something that you're interested in. So we'd of course like to see Gary Oaks as a big element of this plan. No surprise there. The Gary Oaks Society also has what we call the Sound Oaks Initiative. So we have a Gary Oak mapping program that we run and that we pay for. It's available online, and so we can support that either with that technical GIS experience, and then also, of course, we're happy to share the data. The data is a mix of data we've collected, data the city has collected, and data the state has collected. So pretty comprehensive there. So city tree plan. Looking forward to participating. The next, we're really excited. So City Parks did a tremendous job. They have the rock, the boulder installed. And you can see the Smith Park plaque there. We've had that produced. Councilman Stuckey was really instrumental in allowing us to use his resources, or his vendor rather, and we paid for it to get the plaque produced at a foundry. So the plaque turned out absolutely beautifully. So we're looking forward to finally installing this spring. The city crews put in a small expansion of the plaza. This is going to go right next to that 3-panel interpretive sign in Smith Park. So the rock is in, the plaza's in, and so save the date. We're suggesting April 12th. At 1 p.m. So that's a Saturday, so hopefully you all can come. We're going to have light refreshments, we're going to have some beverages, some fun raffles of some free items to give away. So we'll have that ribbon cutting. And the date's important, of course, right? This is going to be during the peak wildflower bloom in Smith Park. So we've got chocolate lily, fawn lily, shooting star, all of those native plants that would be present, right, in a Gary Oak ecosystem. So that'll be a really fun ribbon cutting and kind of the cherry on top. There's been so many awesome improvements in the park. There's the new garden club, of course, the new garden club garden that's down in the corner with their plaque, right? So we've really made some incredible progress there in Smith Park, and so this kind of seals the deal for the Washington Heritage Register. All right, here's some new ones. So I think in another meeting you all were talking a bit about Flintstone Park, and the discussion came up, hey, why is it named Flintstone Park, right? And there's this Flintstone car, what's it doing there? And you were right. I think Tom, was that you that had kind of relayed some of the history around when they were building Flintstone Freeway, aka now Bayshore Drive. They were dumping large boulders in the bay, and Dorothy Neal had remarked, it looks like something that would come from the town of Rubble, right? The Flintstones, and that was a really popular comic at the time. So this, I think, based upon my research, is our oldest piece of public art in the town that still survives. Makes sense, made out of concrete, right? And so we believe that this is a strong candidate for our local register as well as the national register because it is both meets the age requirements, and then of course it was part of that comic series, and then the TV show. The TV show was the second most popular cartoon TV show ever, only bested by The Simpsons, right? So Simpsons number one, but the Flintstones was number two. So. And this dates from the 1950s to 1964 era. It was completed in 1964, but the conception for Flintstone Freeway and reclaiming the bay and creating that land started around the 1950s. So it took them almost 15 years from start to finish to do. So again, circa 1964. We believe it's a really unique attraction in our downtown. We don't know of any other communities that have a Flintstone car that you can actually sit in. There is a reproduction Flintstone car that actually works, but of course it's not available to the public to go sit in and take pictures. So we'd love to get this nominated. Part of what's also driving this is that the Historic Preservation Commission is really interested in seeing other nominations come through for things, especially things that the city owns. We'd like to provide an interpretive sign. So if this was nominated, we'd love to provide an interpretive sign sharing a bit of the history of what the Flintstone car is. It's a way to, we believe, encourage park use. It's a tourist attraction. It dovetails really nicely with the Serendipity Lane, right? Serendipity Lane kind of dumps you out very close there, and so that'd be a great attraction. One of the other ideas that we had is to ask the city if they would do an honorary proclamation. So initially, Bayshore Drive was called Flintstone Freeway. We even have seen some advertisements in the newspaper where businesses were advertising their name as Flintstone Freeway. That name, the history goes, supposedly was changed. There were some condo owners down there that didn't want their address to be Flintstone Freeway, so the official name got changed to be Bayshore Drive. But we'd like to see something sort of like we did with the Avenue of the Oaks, right? Just an honorary proclamation, just to kind of keep that history alive to why it was called Flintstone Freeway. And so this will be a mix of funders, including the Gary Oaks Society, but fully funded. So we don't have an ask of you other than perhaps just some labor time in line with your budget for this particular project. So that's Flintstone Car and Flintstone Freeway. We'd like to do another historic designation this year, and this is the Holland Gardens Windmill. This is now the only publicly owned windmill in Oak Harbor. Interestingly enough, this windmill predates the one that was down at City Beach / Windjammer Park. We believe this is also a really strong candidate for our local, City of Oak Harbor local heritage register, as well as the Washington State Heritage Register. This was built in 1971, and it was part of the early Holland happening. And so the story goes, the parkland was donated by the daughter of Jerome Ely. So Jerome Ely was Oak Harbor's first mayor. He owned a large portion of what is now downtown Oak Harbor and further up. And so his daughter married one of the Neals. So the Neal, as in like Neal Barn, the roller barn. And so then she donated that kind of L-shaped piece to the city, and that's why then the park has the name Neal Park. During the late 60s, when they decided they were going to do a Holland happening, this was really driven by Hal Ramaley. So he was really interested in tulips. There was a tulip show, I think, in La Conner that he kind of brought over to the city, and then as part of that, they decided to celebrate their Dutch heritage. So they started up this Holland happening. They put in Holland Gardens, so that's why there is that Holland Gardens section of Neal Park, and they planted it with tulips and all sorts of other beautiful flowers. They had like a koi pond, some sort of a small pond with fish. They had a greenhouse. They had the whole thing done up. So they started with the garden first, and then they built the windmill. So yeah, they had those lush landscape gardens and whatnot. The historic nomination would cover just the windmill, of course. The gardens themselves are now gone, but certainly could be put back if that was an interest. I think this is really a big opportunity for us to recognize our Dutch heritage. Certainly Holland Happening is now no longer. It was, I think, Culturefest, and as things continue to change, I think this is a really cool opportunity, and not many people know that this windmill is there, right? It was kind of always sort of overshadowed by the windmill down at the waterfront. That was the one that everybody kind of knew. So this is a great opportunity. We'd like to do an interpretive sign there, if this was placed on the register, just to teach a little bit about the history of the windmill, share a little bit about the park, mention Holland Happening, and that interpretive sign, we've secured a donation from a local family of Dutch descent who are willing to pay for that. So that project would be fully funded if we move forward with that. Any questions so far on anything I've covered? No? Okay, I'll keep moving. So we're doing a lot of history, right? I don't know if you've driven around the island and seen these brown Island County historic site signs. There is one, or there are a couple that features one site in Oak Harbor. Does anybody know where you might have seen this or what site it points to? Anybody in the audience? No, not Smith Park. Well, that's cheating. Nobody? Okay, which one is it? Right? The Neal Water Tower. Yep, next to the roller barn. So we do have one set of signs for these historic sites, but we really feel like this is a great opportunity for cross collaboration, right? With the Historic Preservation Commission. There's the existing site, the Neal Barn and Water Tower. They've got the signs on Highway 20, both north and south, and then once you get onto Whidbey Avenue, there's also a sign that points the way. The reason why I really like these signs, and I think they're important to us, is that they're harmonized across the island. And why is that important? That's important because tourists who have seen the sign for Greenbank Farm, it might have been there, tourists who have seen the Eby's Landing overlook sign or the sign that also points the way to the historic Coupeville waterfront, they know what this sign is, and they know the quality of the sites that they're pointing to. So that's why I think it's a real opportunity for us to use these these signs for various historic sites. So the ones that would qualify, Smith Park, of course, good suggestion, right? That's already on the register. And then if we got Flintstone Car and the Holland Gardens Windmill, those would qualify as well. The great thing is these are great for tourism because all three of these sites are open to the public. They're free to use and free to enjoy. So Gary Oaks Society would, of course, help to fund these signs, getting them printed, and then streets, we were just hoping if they could provide the unistrut posts and the labor to install. That's kind of how we did it with the Avenue of the Oaks sign, and that seemed to work really well. So that's the list of projects that we were hoping to do. So let's talk a bit about the benefits and the positive publicity. So this photo, this is really cool. So this is the Flintstone car, and this is when the car was at the corner of Midway Boulevard and Pioneer. So you can see the building just to the left off of her shoulder there. That's the old barber shop that's getting ready to be demolished. But they kind of plunked the car down there when it was first done. This was Miss Naval Air Station, Whidbey Island, 1964. She was not yet of age, and so they christened the car with a bottle of root beer instead to be appropriate. So interesting too, you can see the top is slightly different than the top is now. They had kind of a wooden structure, very much like the Flintstone car had, and then they draped kind of some canvas looking material over it. Of course, the top now is metal. But anyways, so we feel like we can continue to build on the positive momentum that we've had for ecotourism and historic tourism. I think sometimes there's this incorrect assumption that Oak Harbor doesn't maybe have a lot of history when compared to Coupeville or Langley, but we believe that's not true. We just need to recognize it and point it out to people so that they can see that. We've also had 2 brochures, thanks to an LTAC grant, on the ferries this year, and we thought, we'll just have to print them once, we'll see how they do. We ran out mid-year and had to reprint them immediately. I mean, we passed out thousands of brochures, so there's absolutely demand for Oak Harbor for things like ecotourism and historic tourism that we're excited to lean on. People are already coming to the island for these experiences, so this isn't a new market or a new demographic. Oak Harbor just needs to stand up and get our fair share, basically, of these tourist dollars that are coming. And the best part, in my opinion, is these take advantage of existing infrastructure, existing sites, existing parks. So it's nothing we have to go out and build, right? There's nothing, we don't have to spend millions of dollars. We already have these really cool things. All we have to do is recognize them and promote them a bit. And of course, locals, we love to learn about our own unique history, and helping to recognize and interpret these different pieces absolutely does that. Another part is community pride, right? Recognizing Oak Harbor's history, what makes us really special. This builds upon positive efforts. We're really excited to see the Historic Preservation Commission continuing to gain steam and recognizing even more. Celebrates what makes us unique, gives us educational opportunities, right? Much like we've done. And then celebrating anniversaries is just a plain fun reason to celebrate, right? Celebrating that 110th anniversary. The funding part, right? So I think this is what also makes these projects unique. We're not coming to you and asking for a bunch of money. We are coming with the projects, and we are coming with the funding. So just looking really for partnership. So we provide a really high value and a high return on investment with just a small ask. Typically just labor costs to have some of these installed, and those are typically very, very small. So we also unlock grant funding. So once some of these pieces are on historic registers, either the national or the state, it does unlock for Oak Harbor new grant funding sources that you did not have at your disposal before. So I think that's also something that's really cool. And so overall, we feel like these projects give pretty significant bang for the buck. Last but not least, positive publicity, right? We all love positive publicity. You can see those are some of the articles that were done for the Centennial Grove 10 years ago when that project was done. We've got King 5. They did both an article on their website as well as a video for their evening news, and then Whidbey News Times wrote about it as well. So we know also that the Whitby News Times has written numerous articles about that, and we're very appreciative. So we feel like these projects give us a lot of opportunity to continue to not only do good for our community, but be collectively recognized, right, for the great things that have happened. So there's a really great story, a really great through line for these pieces, and we're happy to, of course, collaborate with your city communications department on this. So that's what I've got. What questions can I answer for you today?
I really like the targeting of the Holland Gardens thing, so kudos to y'all for, I think, identifying that. I really appreciate it. In thinking about that, knowing what it has been in the past, you know, also I grew up here, so I have a long memory of what it was. Are there any thoughts towards whether or not this actually occurs, but even thoughts towards wanting to do something there to maybe bring it back to even a shade of its former glory? Has that crossed the mind?
A good question. I would probably defer to Brandon and Brian on that question. I think for the scope of our project, it's certainly just kind of recognizing the windmill, but that could be a catalyst, right? A catalyst for perhaps bringing back some part of that.
I was mostly curious just because I know how one thing sort of leads to another when the imagination gets going and we think about this stuff. So I was just curious if you had any sort of story percolating in your imagination on that, but no worries. It's just something that I've often thought about. So thank you anyway for thinking about that park. That means a lot to me.
Thanks, Eric. Any other questions I can answer? Historical tidbits I can share that piqued your imagination?
I think we have any other questions. Thank you so much for your presentation and all of the history. I always appreciate all of your wealth of knowledge that you share. Yeah, I agree with Eric about Holland Gardens. It would be wonderful to see that kind of get back to what it used to be.
Back to
I didn't
blooming.
grow up here, but I imagine that it was once much more beautiful than it is now. So, yeah, thank you so much, and we're happy to help out and work with you going forward on these projects.
Wonderful. All right, great. Well, we'll continue to be working with Brian Smith, and then, of course, as those nominations are prepared, we can share those with you as well. That'll contain kind of the long-form historical narrative as well as the photos too. So, if you're interested in more history, those will be forthcoming. We'll keep moving. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much. Okay, so then we will move on to item B, which is website updates. Liz and Brian, did you have any updates on the website?
So there's a lot of changes to the website that need to be made that we've sat down with Mikhail, and so there are certain things that we within the division can make edits to, and then certain things that we don't have the permissions to. And so we are in the queue for our requested edits to be made, and really what that was it's really taking the site mapping of where all the pages are and what pages are involved in our website and moving them to the right places, renaming pages, deleting pages. And so once that's in place, then we can easily go in and make content updates to the pages. So we've made progress, we've cleaned up a lot of things that we can, and now we're kind of in a holding pattern until we can move forward.
Yeah, well, we'll probably have another committee meeting with Maggie and Mikhail. We had a little bit of a break over the holidays, but getting back together once we start, like Liz said, once we're able to make some of those structural changes, and then we'll just go through and refine some of the content and also do an evaluation of clicks to the highest priority information. So we're trying to pull together, okay, what are the things that people are coming to the website most for? Things like program registration, finding out how to make reservations, contact information, different things like that, and making sure that those are intuitive to find on the website. So we'll do that in our next evaluation when we sit down.
Thank you. Any comments or questions? Okay. All right. We will go ahead and move on to item C, fee schedule review and approval. Do we want to take comments on this first, or did you want to?
Well, let me, so we sat down with each of the leagues. That was a suggestion that came out of our last meeting. And we did ask to push the fee schedule back a little bit, and give us a little bit of time to do that. We did make a few adjustments based off some of those meetings. I'll share my screen here with you. Let's see. Let's go with this one. I'll show you the edited version. And you guys have seen this document. We've talked about it in commission meeting a few times now, and in all the committee meetings. So here are the changes to the fee schedule. We've made a few edits since it was approved last time by the commission, just from some council feedback. We brought down the changes to Kitchen A from 150 to 100. We did make some changes with on-site storage, so we'll be assessing that at $100 per container per year. And then we will be doing a $500 a month concession stand fee for the league's use. That's when we see the highest cost to the city for utilities and our expenses related to that, which covers about half of that.
Just to clarify, that's the concession stand at Fort Nugent only?
Yes.
Yeah.
We did add a late fee of 20% per annum. Annum? Annum? If I say that right. For leagues, with the change in how we're assessing the fees, with the going from per player per hour, we will work with leagues to get the schedules, and we'll be able to.
Can't hear you, Brian.
Sorry. Per hour, we'll be moving from per participant to per hour, so we'll be working with the leagues to get those schedules after their registration time has ended. Let's see. Oh, did we make any other changes outside of those league ones you want to talk about, Liz?
Just all the other fees and anything else. There's been a lot of discussions around the special event fees. Oh, sorry, microphone. We've also had some discussions around the special event fees. And so is that one that we've covered with you guys yet?
I don't think we've talked about it in the commission, with the whole commission.
Okay. So let me get to those. Do you have those pulled up? But yes, none of these other fees had any large changes to them. And some of it was just items that hadn't been included in our master fee schedule previous to now. So we've added those in, having our cancellation fees in there. Other items that we have available. And so the big change for all of those is just where it's located in the master fee schedule. It was in a separate addendum, and now they're moving it into the schedule with parks, having parks and recreation all together. And so that's a big change for the master fee schedule in this draft. Is the special event find here? And I think it's under, okay, page 24. So special events is something that's also moving under our Parks and Recreation umbrella, right? So we've been included in a lot of the discussions for our special event permits and fees. We are looking to move from a structure where it's just the $50 for an application for any special event of 50 people or more. So it didn't matter if you had 2,000 people or 50 people, the application fee was the same. And the application process is definitely more time consuming for the larger events, and it requires a bit more time. So we wanted to recognize that in these fees. We did sit down with myself and Craig, our recreation coordinator, and Mikhail, sat down with our representatives from the chamber and also from Main Street, and talked through what some of these special event permit fees would look like in changes. And so this is what we are putting forward to council, is breaking it up. So this would require a code change as well. Right now, a special event is triggered at 50 or more people, and we're proposing changing it to 100. So that some of those smaller events, small weddings at the park, things like that, aren't having to go through that same process. So then you would have the different levels. The small special event, which is 101, which now is the new trigger point for a special event. There are other trigger points for special events. So you can have less than 100 people and still need a special event permit if there's another thing that triggers it, like, blow up things or amplified music, other items, right? But as far as people attendance triggering a special event, and then the 250 and up is a medium, and then a large special event is 1,000 or more. And then there's been discussion around a specific fee for a road closure. So for the ones that are requiring city staff to come out and close the roads for parades and street fairs as well. And so those are changes and updates to the master fee schedule as well.
Yeah. So outside of the changes to the storage container fee and the concession stands fee, and how we're doing field allocation for football and soccer, the other change with soccer is that we'll work with them individually on the clinics. Let me go here. Soccer clinics at $50 an hour. Some of those clinics, though, are not like the higher skill, competitive travel team type clinics. They're more for helping kids that are, like goalie, need a little more skill development hours. So we would consider those more of like recreation type programs that would have a higher subsidy, right? We did sit down and share with each of the leagues our costs for the fields, what makes those up. The programs all continue to be very highly subsidized, but I think they fit within the cost recovery model of subsidy support from the city for programs like this. This helps us to have a better understanding of how we're assessing fees by impact, but it really doesn't get us a whole lot closer to a higher cost recovery rate. But we'll continue to work with the leagues in future years on finding a good balance there. Our recreation staff also met with the Little League because they already have their registration open for 2025. We're proposing adjusting their fee to an hourly rate of $7.21 as an introductory rate for 25, and then we'll take that up to the fee schedule proposed rate next year at $11.75 per hour for the ball fields and $10 an hour for softball fields. Anything else you want to speak for?
Yeah, and I see we have some of our folks from Little League here, so I know we're looking forward to hearing from them. But just as a recap of our meeting with them and where we left things, and thank you, Carrie, for also attending that meeting, is we had some internal discussions with them about how the rates would impact the players and the kids, and again, right now, registration already being open, not being able to impact the rates for this year. And so, do you want to share that screen? So, we came up with some proposed fees that then Tim was going to take back and have discussions with board members over the weekend and then give us feedback today. And so maybe we'll get some of that feedback at this meeting, which is wonderful. But this is where the conversation was left at the end of our meeting. So you can see at 2024, that's the per player rate that they're charged for 2024. Their amount of participants, which they agreed was a pretty good number for utilizing when we're doing these projections forward. And that what their cost was. So then proposed for 2025 is an introductory hourly rate, just to change this process over to hourly instead of the per player, in order to keep them at that rate without an estimated increase. Since their registration has already been opened, it would look like $7.21 an hour. And then the proposed fees that would be effective in 2026 are shown there, and that's what we've been talking about, the baseball field and at $11.75 and the softball fields at $10. There was some discussion that maybe we'll hear about today, that they had some thoughts about potentially charging the same rate for both baseball and softball. They thought maybe internally they might have reason to want to do that. We said we were open to something like that. And so that's where the total combined, if we were going to charge the same rate for both, then that's what the rate is down there. So we did, give those options. We were just wanting to open the conversation of how can we move in this direction that we've been tasked to, but also ensure the viability of your program and the continued support there. And then another thing that we discussed that Tim said was, if there were some items that Park is going to be maintaining on the fields, that isn't something they're having to put in their budget, then that would help out with any potential fee increase. And so our next step was, and Tim said he would put together, here's a list of the work that the Little League does on the fields, and then we would come with, okay, and this is what Parks does to make sure that the level of maintenance that is needed is happening there, but to see if there is a potential cost savings to their organization, who has typically and for a long precedented time done a lot of amazing work to keep those fields going.
We will be meeting with the school districts coming up here this week to talk about field use and leases and agreements. We did get notice from our legal department that there is a lease excise tax that we need to be assessing for the state. It's not something we've really built in before, so we're looking at what that looks like. Right now, the determination is that that would not be required for anything that's of a temporary nature. And so I think we're only going to have to assess that for rentals like IRS or the modular building, some of the buildings like land leases, the Girl Scout building, Big Brothers, Big Sisters, some of those things. And from discussion so far, I don't believe we're going to have to apply it to like kitchen rentals or field use or things like that. In those discussions with the school district, we'll probably talk quite a bit about both the soccer fields as well as the softball fields. We are asking Commerce to redirect $300,000 of the $610,000 grant that we received for improvements of the softball fields. We did quite a bit of work with the baseball fields and redid the infields there last year. And so the softball fields, we've had comments from the community that they'd like to see some love given there, and so we're looking at ways that we can direct some funding that way. And so we'll have more discussion on that with our athletic our athletic facilities committee in the next coming months. Any questions at this point? As I said, we've rehashed this a few times. I don't want to go, we really could spend several hours if we wanted to go through it all the way again, but I want to make sure that we answer whatever questions you have. This is going to council this week. Dave Goldman will be presenting the fee schedule for adoption, and so we are looking for a motion to approve with those changes and tweaks that we made after discussions with the leagues. And David, in that email that I forwarded to you, you'll see he says that it doesn't show on there yet the changes from our meeting with the Little League. It took a while for us to get that meeting sit down, but he will be incorporating that before that goes to council.
I think the only comment, like you said, we've talked about this a lot, and we're trying to sort of fine tune everything at least best we can with this new change. I would like to just simply state for the record that next time we do something like this, that we start at the earliest part of the year before the year in which we want to implement it. We started so late on this that it has caused a lot of unnecessary stress because we haven't had a chance to develop, I think, one, the rapport and the relationship even with the new department, with a lot of these leagues that are invested. So we're doing a lot of catch up, and a lot of it is sort of we're unearthing history and these handshake agreements and a lot of stuff that causes these, that has an emotional tie. And so what we're doing is we're changing things, and we're finding out that it's more than simply numbers. Like, we're affecting some of this stuff at a heart level because there's been investments in that have been in sweat, blood, tears, and money that's gone unrecognized. And so if we're going to talk about, let's just say we're going to do a change for January 2026, like, we should start talking about that in February of 2025, I think, to really flesh these things out. I know as the process gets better and we have a better understanding of what this new order will look like, that it won't take as long. But as we're changing worlds, so to speak, we really need to make sure that comes down to the affected departments and volunteers and invested parties from the community at a much sooner rate, because this was just so ad hoc. It created a lot of, I think, unnecessary stress. And that's not the look that we really want in this new era of Parks and Rec. So I just want to put that out for the record.
Well, we're supposed to take public comment before we come to the board, so.
Yeah, I was going to say, let's go ahead and, if there's anyone present that would like to speak on this item, let's have them come forward.
So the letter I wrote and gave you gives some more of the history of Little League's relationship with the city. If you go down to City Beach and you
Sorry,
look...
could you please state your name?
Oh, I'm
for the
sorry.
record?
I'm sorry. I just forget that everybody doesn't know who I am. I'm Rita Dibdahl Klein. I've been a member of North Whidbey Little League since 1997, which is more than a third of its existence in the city of Oak Harbor. So our relationship has always been a collaborative and cooperative relationship, and we want to continue that. When it comes to the concession stand, for example, the city does need to remember that if you go down there and look at it, and I have pictures, the materials to build that were donated to the Little League. Not to the city, to the Little League. The dugouts were built for the Little League and donated to the Little League and made so that they could be moved to the fields that one time, many moons ago, we were promised new fields elsewhere in town, but had to abandon them because one was over a dump that's still emitting methane. And things like that over the years. But that's all. We had a very nice meeting with Liz and Craig the other night and got a few things worked out, and they listened to us and they heard our concerns, and you saw the results. We're very thankful for that. I am right now bringing up, there is an item on the master fee schedule that says tournaments. There's a fee for tournaments of something like $23 to $25 per hour. When we had fields that were good enough to have state tournaments down at Windjammer, we have teams that come from all over the state. We do not charge for that. Little League is not about profit. There's a man named Mark White over in Mount Vernon who makes his living holding tournaments for adult softball. That's the umpire in me speaking. But he makes a living off of that. That is not what Little League is. Little League, when teams come here for the state tournaments, they do not pay us anything. The league doesn't charge anything. If the league makes any money, it's off of additional concession stand usages. So if we have to pay that fee of $23 to $25 per hour for tournaments, we won't be hosting any tournaments. And that is a loss of hotel and restaurant tax dollars to the city. So that is something that in the future will have to be looked at if the North Whidbey Little League is to host any state tournaments. I just wanted to bring up that information.
Thank you, Rita. Did we have anyone else here to make comment on this item?
Hi, my name's Kim Ford, Oak Harbor resident, born and raised. I'm coming as a community member. I live on Talon Loop, Southwest Talon Loop. As a parent of daughters who participate in many of the rec league sports, and as a parent who also volunteers in many of these rec league sports, participating in volunteer hours to ensure that our sports are able to maintain themselves, to support our youths as they learn teamwork and discipline and sportsmanship. I hope that we're taking into consideration many of these youth leagues are non-for-profit and have very thin operating margins. And we ourselves are not seeking to make money or recoup costs on the investment that we're making in the youths that will grow up to manage our community and our country. I do hope as we're going forward and looking to increase the costs that we are recouping from our youth, that that's not the heart and the soul of what we're doing here with our master fee schedule. I don't feel that making money off of our children should be anything that we should be seeking to do. I am encouraged that we're seeking to make improvements to the softball fields because I must be honest, it's a bit disheartening looking at the fee schedule, and we acknowledge that our softball fields are not on par with what we're providing our baseball fields to the extent that we're charging less money for the fields that are in use. So that was very encouraging to hear, Brian. Thank you. Again, as a community member, I do hope that as we're going forward, we're being conscientious in where we're seeking to recoup costs, and that perhaps our youth sports might not be the first and foremost that we should be seeking to recoup on. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Did we have anyone else here to comment on this item? Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and take comments from the commission then. Did anyone have any comments or questions?
Yeah, I'm encouraged about the communication effort between the Parks and Rec Department and the organizations. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to attend the meetings because I was out of town, but I am interested. So it appears that they were beneficial. I'm not sure that there was consensus or that there was at least understanding. Were there any particular hard spots that you need to work through?
No, so I was in the meetings with the football league and the soccer league. Both meetings were very positive. I think both we worked together to find. No one likes to talk about fees, right? I mean, I'm not in the business to make money. I'm in the business to increase participation. But we do have a mandate from the administration to adjust fees, to start looking at cost recovery. We've had that comment from council wanting to look at our budget and You know, are we bringing in revenues for services? Every city service requires a funding source. So it's going to come from taxes or user fees. Even with these very small adjustments, for the most part, we're mostly changing the methodology, right? We're trying to keep any increases as low as we can for the leagues. We don't want to put anyone out of business. We want these leagues to be successful. We want to partner with them. The city pays a lot of money to support these leagues. In most cases, the cost recovery from the leagues is about 10%, 10 to 20%, depending on the league and the field type. So that's a lot of money that the city's putting into it. It costs us, you know, anywhere usually around $70,000 or so per field to maintain those, and so we only get a small percentage of that from any user fees. But to answer your question directly, yes, the 2 meetings that I were in were very positive. We talked through why we're making changes, where are the heartache points for the league, and we try to work with them to shift fees around so that made sense to their participants and their boards as to what are they helping to support, the city to support in these activities, and what makes sense. And you know, I give definitely kudos to them for, you know, thinking very thoroughly through this, looking at their numbers, coming to us with their comments, and staff have been great with trying to make adjustments and speak to that. You know, we have pressure on both sides, right? We have council and administration asking for one thing, and obviously, you know, the community doesn't want to pay more for anything else, but we want, you know, increased services and better facilities. So we are looking for alternative revenue sources to help support that, so it's not all put on user fees. But I feel pretty good about what came out of those meetings. Liz can speak to the Little League meeting, but from what I understand, there was good communication, and I think we came away with a good understanding on both sides.
Yeah, I would agree, and you know, she spoke to it as well, and I do think we found somewhere that we can move forward with. We did say to Tim that he would have till the end of today to provide any feedback from his organization, and so what we want to, you know, do with that, because it looks like, do we need to do a motion or approval of what we're putting forward to the fee schedule today, right now?
Yeah, we're going, yes. Because this is going to council this week, we would like to hear your guys' feedback and a motion one way or another on whether you approve it. If you are not in approval of the proposed fees, we'd like your comments to pass on to council.
I'm still trying to figure out, and I'm digesting this a little bit, but why is there such a vast difference on what football is being charged compared to all others?
Well, part of that is the activity. Part of it is the fields, right? We're not comparing apples to apples between a baseball field or a football field or a soccer field, right? It depends on partly on what our costs are, but then also on the market. So we did a market comparison of about 21 different municipalities around the area. What are they charging for their fields by field type? And it is charged differently by field type, and that's just pretty much standard practice. But also, does that make sense in a percentage-wise of what are the city's costs for everything from irrigation, maintenance, materials, repairs, different things like that? And we talked through that. We showed our numbers for expenses to the football league when we met with Eric and went through all that.
Yeah, I was able to attend all 3 of those meetings, so thank you to Liz and Craig and Brian for setting it up, and thank you to all of the representatives from the leagues that were in attendance as well. It was really helpful. I thought, I walked away feeling that each league had come to an acceptable agreement with the fees. We kind of adjusted things, moved things around to make more sense for each league. Sorry, my microphone's making noise. But yeah, I felt like we walked away from each of those meetings with a pretty acceptable agreement between the city and each league. So I feel very comfortable with how those meetings turned out. and what we kind of landed on with numbers. My question is, though, if we're making a recommendation today, does that, anything that Tim comes back with, is that going to have any impact on what we're making a recommendation on specifically?
If there's anything substantial that we feel, okay, they've made a suggestion, that suggestion makes sense, we would recommend a change. We'd send that to David. We can notify you guys of that. I can't imagine that there's going to be anything that's going to be a super substantial change at this point, but yeah, we'll notify you of it. And there'll still be opportunity for comment during the council meeting.
Great. Yeah, go ahead.
So I'm just a little uncomfortable that this board is being asked to approve a fee schedule that we just got at 10 o'clock this morning. I mean, there's been multiple changes to this, and it's a 44-page document that we should really have the time to review and to ask further questions if there are additional changes. And I'm not a fan of getting the information at the time of the meeting and not having an opportunity to peruse it first. I know I'm not a voting member, but it makes me uncomfortable for the entire organization to motion and approve something that they haven't had a chance to thoroughly vet. I know we had some discussion, and that was the reason it got brought back forth. But to get this information at the time of the start of the meeting and then be asked to approve it I don't think is the right manner to do this. And so that's just my 2 cents.
Is that we just had the final meeting with Little League on Friday. We're trying to get the packet together for council. This goes to council this week. So
it does go to council, but we don't necessarily have to approve it at this next meeting. I mean, if Parks isn't ready to approve it, then we push it back another meeting, and then council will approve it then. Council would not approve it without having the opportunity to look at it first. And I don't think any of our boards should do the same. I don't think they should be put in a position that we wouldn't put council in. Council would have this in our packet days before in order to review it, read it, ask questions, be prepared. And I think that's only fair to ask of this board as well, that they have the same opportunity to fully prepare themselves, to know what they're making motions on, and so my recommendation would be push it back at the council level so this board has opportunity to thoroughly vet it, the final version, get all the input from baseball, everybody that's involved, and then make that decision. That's just my input.
Yeah, we have the leagues that are trying to get the registrations going, and so it has been a crunch and a push. And that's always an option. You could ask council to push it back another month, and we can give it another month of looking at.
And I did just want to clarify though that the items that this commission is looking at is probably about 5 pages, right? It's not the whole document. They're not providing feedback or approval for the full master fee schedule. So those couple of pages, yes. And so definitely we do want them to feel comfortable with the time they have with it. But not a lot has changed from the last time we talked about it, except for the slight numbers that then we've covered with you. So just so you're aware that we've gone over the few items that have changed out of the document.
So at the last meeting, I addressed the court usage and the disc golf tournament, the senior center. We didn't adjust any of those rates.
Correct. There's no changes to any of our older adult programming, and I don't think any to the other basketball, nothing like that. Yeah.
Okay. So then one of the reasons for postponing this meeting is so we can get a breakdown of what those costs are, so we can compare the cost to what our actual recovery is. And I still believe that our recovery level is extremely low on those programs. And so the idea was that we were going to bring forth some of those costs so we could see where we're at in terms of recovery. So it sounds like all we've addressed is the youth sports portion of it, of a 44-page master fee schedule. Well, and then special events. But I still would like to see what that breakdown for the cost recovery for the senior center programming is. In terms of, we're charging $20 an hour for after hours. And then what the court fees are and what our disc golf programming is, these are things that were brought up last time. Why are we not addressing them? The idea was that we were going to bring that forward so we can see what our actual costs are and then what the recovery is on that. And so it doesn't sound like we're addressing that, and that's still, in my mind, still needs to be addressed.
Do we have any other comments or questions?
I don't know if there's a middle way between what Councilmember Marshall is suggesting and voting on this today. I would like to hear or see what happens with Tim in the Little League before I put forward a vote. I don't want to be a thorn in your side, but also there were some issues that we've dealt with in the recent past that have had us approve stuff in which more information came forward later and put us in a very uncomfortable spot. And I would like to avoid that at all costs. I recognize the time crunch. And I'm trying to see if there's some middle way in which we can just get that information before we go to a vote, because I am a little uncomfortable approving something without all the data coming in at this point.
I guess where I stand is you guys have done a lot of work on this, obviously, a lot of research. You're the professionals. You've compared to other communities. You've sat down, you've talked to the organizations. And I applaud all of that. I'm not sure that I'm comfortable getting in the middle of all this work that you've already done unless I have some opposition. I don't, at this point, have any opposition to any of it, and that's why I asked the question, were there any particular hard points? And maybe we could discuss those. But to go through this line by line, I can't even read it on the screen. I could get it, and I've looked through it before. So I just don't know how detailed we need to get in our review, or how detailed the council wants to get in their review. Or should we just be addressing the issues where there are hard spots? Anyway, that's just a comment. I'm not ready to say I approve everything line by line. And I don't know if that's our function or not. I think that's your function. If there are any, like I say, hard spots that need discussion and approval, then I'd be more amenable to taking those on than the entire document. But that's just my feeling.
Well, and I think that's why I want to see what Little League comes back with, because we've spent time discussing, I think, football and soccer to a greater extent, and so there's at least more out there in the air whether or not it's settled. But Little League, I mean, has been a bit of a challenge in a lot of different ways, and we don't need to go into all of those. And I think I have concern that because of some of the issues that they're facing, some which were even brought up today, that we may see more than we anticipate. I don't know that for sure, but I could see if I was involved in Little League potentially having a list of things. And there's just some different history from both sides there, I think, that raises some questions. And that's my only concern with Little League, is I do think it could be, if that wasn't part of this, I'd make a motion to send it to City Council, but that is there, and I'm concerned about what may or may not come out. And maybe that's a concern out of ignorance, and I'll accept it if it is. But looking at the state of the affairs for Little League, I could see some significant concerns coming up. I mean, a few of them were just even highlighted in regards to safety here. But if you take a look around there, you can see the condition of which the facilities are in, the hardscape, not even the fields. And I'm really curious to see what comes back in regards to that with changes in fee structure.
To clarify with Little League, Tim was going to Little League, and Liz, correct me if I'm wrong, but the main discussion was whether or not to charge 2 different rates for softball and baseball. Am I remembering that correctly?
Yeah, I think he wanted to review it in its totality with everyone, yes, with his board, just before being the spokesman for it. But that was kind of the one point that he wasn't sure which direction they wanted to go.
So I have a comment on this. So Rita, thank you for this letter. I'm one of the newer people coming in on the whole commissioner thing. So because you came in, because you wrote a letter, I feel like maybe you haven't been heard all the way through. Are you just, so that's my concern, is if you were so concerned that you came in and you wrote a letter, maybe the fee schedule is not for Little League what it needs to be.
We understand the need for change. We understand that. What I don't think is being understood is that the relationship of Little League with the city has been different. And there's more, it's more than just the fees that are changing. We need to have some time with the city, and so this is not really with the fees that we're concerned. We need some time with the city to find out our new role. Because our role has always been, since 1951, or 1952, because that's when they came and asked the city for permission to build the fields. Our role has always been that we took care of things down there, and then we worked together with the city on big projects. We split the cost of the dirt. We split the cost of putting the netting up to protect the condominiums, windows. All these things have been together with the city, but primarily it was us down there. We built the concession stands, we built the dugouts, we built all this. So if this is going to change, if the city is going to say, it's going to change the parameters, we need to work together on that and know what it is to move forward. So it's not just the fees. It's the whole thing changing. Because we, frankly, especially since COVID, we haven't had the volunteer base to maintain the fields the way we always used to do. And yes, we always did. As long as, since 1997, we were the ones who did the work down there. It wasn't the city. So how are we moving forward?
Yeah, and I think in the league meeting, they did discuss creating a memorandum of understanding outline, minimum level of service being provided, and provide the league with understanding what level of field maintenance is being provided and what is not included and done by the league.
So,
memorandum of understanding for understanding city responsibilities and league responsibilities.
Yeah, Rita, it was the part of the discussion when we talked about having Little League kind of draft up what their expectations were with the fields, bringing that to Brandon and Brian, and then kind of working out who's going to be responsible going forward for what aspects and how that will impact your costs to Little League specifically. So I guess my question for you, Rita, is with the fees in terms of what we had discussed for the field usage and the numbers that we landed on at our meeting on Friday, are the fees that we landed on, are those something you have a concern about, or is it primarily right now the division of who's taking care of what?
Yeah, the fees aren't the only thing because it isn't, it's an entirety. I mean, you know, it's all, the city has, the fields were always open for everyone, and now they're locked because the city wants to monetize. So now, you know, if you want to go down there and hit some balls on the ball field, you can't get in. And it's, you know, and it's a change, it's all a change, and it's all something that we have to work together moving forward.
Yes.
Because we need to know, hey, you know, we rebuilt the mounds, I don't know how many times since I've been a member. Put in all you know how expensive those bases are? Those bases we put in. Because they have to be breakaway by Little League rules. So this needs to be worked out. We can continue working with Brian, but it can't be done in a matter of a couple of months. It just can't be.
I think we need to think about this, I think, in a couple of ways. Sometimes you get work that you want to do, and sometimes you get the work that's given to you. And I think in regards to this fee structure, there's work that was given to sort of us and Brian and Liz as a department, like, hey, you need to figure this out. In the ideal world, I think the conversations that we would have with the leagues and all the key stakeholders, we would have happened first in sort of more of a like a vision building and kind of an idea of where we're all going, and then we'd be assigning fees, I think, to help us reach those points that we're going to get to, right? We'd understand this in a greater, with a greater vision and a greater sense of scope. Well, we got work that was handed to us, and we don't have time to do that greater scope that's going to allow some of these conversations, like what does the partnership look like between Little League? What does it look like between Oak Harbor football and cheer, and some of the other stakeholders that we have in regards to, you know, where are we going? Are we wanting to be a place that hosts regional Little League tournaments again? And what standards do we need to meet? Is that something that Oak Harbor wants to plant a flag in and be a stakeholder for that, whether that's Little League or football, soccer, whatever it might be? We don't have answers to those questions yet because we haven't cast that greater picture. But we do have this work that we have to do right now because it's been handed down to us, is what kind of fees are we going to do? I'm always most comfortable creating that bigger plan first, but we don't always have that luxury. I do think we have plans in place to do some of that work, and I know that's on Brian's agenda is, you know, let's create this parks master plan, and some of that will be in thinking about who are the stakeholders, who are the users, what are we trying to do with recreation. Conversations that we've never had before because we really haven't had a department like this. We've had take care of the stuff that's out there and, you know, let the volunteers go. I say that as being one for a long time. So I understand that. I just want to make sure that we're knowing that those conversations are coming and they're very valuable to have parties like yourself and others who want to help shape that future. They are coming. But right now there's also this work that we have to decide on. And so I guess asking for the trust that knowing these conversations are coming so we can create this bigger scope and reimagine what those partnerships look like and come to agreements going forward for one, what we're trying to do in the short term and in the long term, and what's our bigger vision for supporting all of these things and working together as a community to achieve whatever those short-term and long-term dreams and visions are.
Carrie, can I just clarify one of the comments that was made? We didn't lock the fields for monetizing them. The parks and all the facilities are open and free for use of the public. We only charge if there's exclusive use, a business activity, or a large organized event. We locked the fields during the season because the league had complaints about it being used as a dog park. We worked with animal control to try and control it, and finally the suggestion, we talked about it in the commission meeting, was to lock the field so they're usable for the leagues without them having to deal with all that mess.
To clarify that point, if the general public wanted to use the field just to go hit balls around, are they allowed to, even though it's locked?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just primarily locked because of the dog, off-leash dog issue. So, just to clarify.
How would they access the field if it's locked?
That's a good question.
Yeah, they can contact us.
Is there contact?
This is not a permanent solution, right? We're
Right,
still trying
yeah.
to work on how do we control this situation. Yeah.
Okay, so if someone says, it's Saturday afternoon, I want to go hit a ball around, but the field's locked, what's their, how do they get in?
Yeah, just contact the department. We have staff that are happy to unlock it.
On Saturdays?
Yeah, Brandon might argue against doing that, but
Yeah. Okay, I just wanted to clarify that so that.
yes, we do have staff on
Okay,
Saturdays.
okay.
Can I ask a question? So regarding costs, and I think it might help to clarify some of the misconceptions as far as recouping and to what degree that we're doing that. Have the costs for field maintenance for last year been provided to North Whidbey Little League, particularly the volunteer park fields? As we know, Windjammer had an exceptional year as far as field maintenance and improvement, but particularly volunteer park. What are the costs associated with field maintenance? I think earlier in this meeting you quoted $70,000 per field.
Yeah, that's for football and soccer. We have the costs calculated for both the volunteer park and Windjammer as well, and we can share that with you.
Have those been provided to North Whitby Little League?
Brandon, oh, it wasn't there. Okay. I don't know if Brandon had sent them before. We have shared those costs with Tim previously, yes.
Are those costs publicly available?
In the budget, yeah, but I can send you.
Just the breakdown
the breakdown of it, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So as far as making a recommendation, I guess 2 questions. If we don't make a recommendation today, this is a question for Councilmember Marshall. Do you think that City Council will be willing to push it out another month? Or is this like we have to do this today, otherwise it's not happening? Or you guys are going to push it through no matter what? Or you're going to deny it if there's no recommendation?
No, I still have questions. And so I'm not comfortable with it just yet. So I can't say that at the next council meeting until some of these other questions are answered that I'm comfortable with it. This is concerning to me, the tournament fee, given that Little League doesn't charge anything for the tournaments. So now they're being, I guess the question is, what is our end game, right? If they're not being charged anything, they're already paying for maintenance of the fields in other regards. The community is going to lose out on potential revenue then by trying to charge $24 an hour. So there's still too many unknowns in this one for me. And to your point, Tom, if you approve the document, if you motion and approve, you're approving the document in its entirety, line by line. That is the responsibility of this commission, is when you're presented with that document, that's your responsibility to take it line by line, and you approve that document in its entirety, not just a few pieces. So that is the responsibility for any commission that we have and for council as a whole. When we get a document, it's our job to read it line by line and make sure that we are in approval of it in its entirety. So for me, to try to push it through next week, I just personally, it's not going to happen for me. Yeah.
So in my opinion, I would say I would like to see the specific questions that are unanswered. Can we get a list of those questions today or right now or whenever before our next meeting, and get those answered, and then get the full fee schedule as amended to us in the packet before the meeting when the agenda comes out. I think that would maybe be helpful for all of us to be on the same page and to have all of the questions answered that need to be answered before we make a formal recommendation, especially if City Council is willing to push it.
To be clear, I don't speak for council.
No, I
just
know,
speak for myself. Yeah.
I feel like you have a good idea of the dynamic though, so if City Council's willing to push it out, I think that would make us all more comfortable in terms of making a recommendation. Is that possible to do?
That would definitely be recommended. Staff will do whatever we're directed to do. We were asked to meet with the leagues, so we met with the leagues. We came back with suggested changes out of those meetings. If there's further things that you guys want us to answer for you, that would be wonderful. If you give us a specific list of question, we'll answer.
So one of the things that we get oftentimes with councils, we get those comparables, right? We've not seen any of the comparables. We don't know we haven't seen anything in writing in terms of what cost recovery is. And so to have that information would be helpful, right? When we do salary or when we do comparables to salaries, right? We get what communities we compared those with, what kind of amenities that they have, what they offer. And so in this, it's just been kind of, here's some numbers, we did the research and go with it. But we've not seen the breakdown of the cost for the maintenance of the football field. It was provided to us. It was, the number was said, but we have no real tangible information to look at and go, okay, well, this is what they have, this is what we have, and kind of get a cost comparison. I mean, one of the things I mentioned before was the pickleball courts. It's $5 an hour, but we're going to invest almost $1 million to build pickleball courts. Whether that comes through grant money or out of general fund or wherever that comes from, if it's a grant, that's still grant money that could have been used towards something else, right? It's still $1 million that's being spent, but we're only going to charge $5 an hour for the usage. it doesn't seem to be a cost recovery in that, right? It's going to be however many years are we going to be in order to rent that out in order to get our cost recovery back. So it doesn't seem to be equitable kind of across the board in terms of some of these programs. And so I'm just curious to see what the breakdown is with some of these other communities, what they charge for pickleball courts or their disc golf or their basketball or, does that make sense?
Sure. You know, and again, you know, it's apples and oranges, right? So what we would charge for reservation of a brand new hardscape court versus a turf field is going to be different, right? And we've, like I said, we've provided our costs of maintaining the fields. So help me understand what you're asking for that is not being provided.
What you had said before was that it's $70,000 for a field, but the field is not used 365 days a year by those leagues, right? It's only used for a short period of time. And from what we can see in terms of just football, for example, you cut the grass once a week. I don't know how much irrigation actually occurs during the season. I don't know that anything is done to the field other than cutting the field, right? Those fields are public fields, they're public parks. They're going to be cut whether football plays on them or whether they don't play on them, right? So that's still going to be there. So what is the true cost recovery as a cost of the league? What is the league costing the city? Because that field is maintained, that field is there, it's a community field, it's going to be used. So what is the actual cost to the city from the league? When you provided that information for the concession stand, great, that's easily tangible for me. And then I can say, okay, well, the cost for the water and the utilities is X amount of money, and you know, we're tasked with trying to recover 50%, for example. That's why it was easy for me to agree, yeah, we'll pay this much more for the concession stand because here's an actual tangible cost of what it costs the city to operate that. And so to have that information to be able to say, okay, well, this is what it costs us to maintain the field for your season, then we can start to look at what cost recovery is for that, right?
Sure. I understand where you're getting at. I don't know how you answer or create that parameter, right? Because the soccer fields, we don't take down the fields or the softball fields or the baseball fields when they're not being used by the league, right? Those fields are maintained year round because we can't take them down and put them back up. The football field or soccer field or baseball field might be used every once in a while by the public, but their main use is to support league play. And they exist for that purpose. And they're maintained year round so they are playable when the season comes, right? So yeah, I understand what you're saying, but you would have to give us some kind of a parameter. We can give you the cost of when the league starts, this is the cost, and when the league ends, this is the cost. And if council wants to direct, this is where you should be looking for your cost recovery and want to give us those parameters within the cost recovery model, then we can do that, sure. But you also have to understand, can see that there's, there is shoulder and off-season maintenance of those spaces, specifically keep them playable when the season comes, right? We renovate and we do repairs and we restore those spaces for when the league use happens.
Okay.
Do you have any other questions or comments from the commission? Okay, so at this point, I think seems the consensus is to table this until our next meeting and when we can get more information, and if we could get a list of specific questions to Brian and Brandon and Liz so that they can answer those questions before our next meeting, that would be wonderful.
I would request a deadline then on what those questions are so that we can get you and what you would feel is an adequate time to look at those and have discussions. So by the end of the week.
Okay.
I have a quick question too,
sure.
by the way. So with this whole master fee schedule, right, we're approving, correct me if I'm wrong, the entirety. So even though we're just Schedule G, if we approve, we're approving the whole master plan, or no, just
Well, I think it'd be
Schedule
appropriate
G?
for you, basically you're making a motion to recommend to council either approval or not, or if you want to table, recommend that council takes that section out of the approved fee schedule and approves that section at another time, whatever that is. I think the appropriate thing would be special, well, it's up to you, I guess, section G. And if you wanted to look at special events or not, it's up to you.
Brian, you mentioned earlier MOUs, and maybe I should know this. Is there a written agreement between the city and each youth sports organization?
There are league agreements, yeah.
There are agreements, and those stipulate who does what?
Yes, within the agreement. I think there needs to be, and what was discussed was a little more in-depth of, hey, the league is expected and doing this for maintenance of the field, and the city will consider that in its assessment of fees, I think is what they were looking for.
Okay, so I think we're at the point now where we're saying any questions need to get to you by the end of the week. Is that?
If that's what I'm hearing the consensus is of the commission, like I said, your options are to approve the fee schedule, specifically the Parks and Recreation section, to not approve it and then give some guidance around what you'd like to see come back. Either way, with a recommendation to council, since ultimately council will either approve it, table it, or kick it back for changes. So whatever your recommendation is, if you are looking to have more discussion around it, then yes, we would ask for you to give us those items that you would like information brought back specifically by the end of the week, and we'll get those, have discussion in the committees, and put it on the agenda. And go ahead.
And I was just going to say that if this clarifies things, David Goldman has said that he is presenting it in a way that if council wants to move forward with certain parts of the fees schedule and hold some back, they can, so that Parks and Recreation, like our Schedule G, if it's not moving forward, wouldn't hold up the rest of master fees. So council will have the opportunity to pull Schedule G and move forward with the other if they would like. So
Thank you, that's helpful to know. So yeah, if I'm getting head nods, so if that's kind of the consensus, we'll get all specific questions to Brian, Brandon, and Liz by the end of this week. If we can reach out to the leagues or disc golf or pickleball, any stakeholders, see if they have any questions, that might be worth the time too. If you guys have the time to do it, that's wonderful. If you want me or any of us to help with that, we can do that too. But just to get all of the questions out there, all of the questions answered, so that we can move forward with this by our next meeting would be fantastic, I think. So at this point, do we need a motion to table it or anything like that?
Yeah, one way or another.
Okay.
Well, I'll make the motion to continue the discussion and have a vote next meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that is unanimous. So we will discuss that at our next meeting. Thank you. In my agenda. All right, so with that, we will move on to item D, scholarships and sponsorships for youth sports.
yes, so this speaks in towards our plan for us as a recreation division to be offering scholarships and seeking sponsorships as a whole for all of our recreation programs. And so that's something that we're working on internally. We have some drafts. We were hoping that it would have been ready for this last activity guide and all of the programs starting right now, but it isn't. But we do have a goal set to have our scholarship opportunities available for sign up for our summer guide. And so what that looks like is us seeking the sponsorships in the back end, which we already have had people reach out to us and offer to participate in that. So formalizing how those sponsorships are received, and then having the scholarship application. And so if the application process is something, are you guys interested in reviewing that? Then we're happy to share that either way.
Yeah, if you could share it.
Okay. Yeah, so I'll make a note for that. We can put on the next one. And what was really kind of helpful and encouraging is when we talked with North Woodby Little League, you know, some of their feedback that they shared is how they're, and I would say this is the same for each of the leagues, trying to maintain a lower rate for the kids who participate and play. And so specifically with the Little Leagues, that we had just a light discussion about the possibility and potential of, you know, how could we help support scholarships for all of our youth programs that are happening with the city, even if they're not specifically ours. And so that is something that we as staff really are passionate in wanting to look at that discussion and how that might happen. Because it does sound like Little League offers scholarships and offsets costs and sliding fees. I don't want to speak to that wrongly, but not necessarily with having a great fiscal foundation to specifically offset those fees. And so in that meeting, we just briefly mentioned, yes, we are working on a scholarship and sponsorship program, and noting that these other recreation providers, our leagues, are also in the same boat of needing that help. The conversation was, okay, how might we do this jointly, or how might we be the clearinghouse for those things, but include kids signing up for the leagues that are happening in our parks as part of those potential scholarship recipients. So any feedback upon that item that you guys might have would be helpful.
Is that going to be very logistically difficult, knowing that registration takes place from one league and then might need to come through somewhere else? Or is there any conversations about streamlining that registration process so that it's one piece flow rather than, you know, having to sign up, so let's say North Woodby Little League, and then having to have, you know, some of those ones that are highlighted for scholarship or something maybe kicked off into another system? Or is there any conversation about having a way to do that would be a lot easier and easier for the parents or whoever's doing it, especially when asking for scholarship isn't the most fun thing you have to do as a parent. You know, having to check multiple boxes for need all the time isn't great. So I'm just thinking in that regard, being able to ask once and, you know, get through that, then make that process better.
No, that's really great feedback. This point of discussion is brand new, right?
Yeah.
It's just something that briefly we talked about at the meeting. So these are the things that we would definitely want to consider. There hasn't been any discussion in you know, streamlining registrations, but one way that this might happen would be more of, okay, we see how much funds we get for sponsorships, and then what are the participation rates in each of the league, and then maybe we're just divvying out a fund. And I don't even know if that's the way we could do it or would do it, or if all scholarship applications come through us. Like, this is just a brand new concept or talk, and we need to make sure that we're utilizing city funds appropriately.
Yeah. Thanks, Liz.
Yeah.
Any other comments or questions on that? Liz, is there anything more specific you want from us right now?
No, just
Okay.
kind of if you do think that is something you would like to see, that's, you know, that collaboration on that level when it comes to scholarships for all recreation in city parks, then we would continue those discussions.
Yeah, I think it's worth continuing
I
those
would love
discussions.
I think it's a great idea. I wonder how it will be received when we say, well, we can't, you know, when people are going to see a fees being assigned to things, and then they're going to say, well, we have to do these things, and then we're going to roll out a scholarship opportunity. I wonder about the question that may or may not be asked about, well, then why aren't we just adding those additional funds to help subsidize it to keep the rates lower across the board? I think I have answers to that. But finding out the way, I mean, we'll have to communicate the heart issue of all of that for those reasons to navigate that. But I can see parents asking that question.
And it's a funny game we play of allocations of funds, and some funds are specific only for certain things, and so it is this game of, okay, well, you receive, there are people in the community willing to give funds for scholarships, but not for maintenance of fields. Okay, well, then that's the way this is going to happen, right? And it is, yeah, it's kind of a funny thing.
Well, and I think it gets to a greater question and strategy that we need to have in regards to civic engagement with recreation in general. How do we have individuals that are supporting at bigger levels, businesses, stakeholders that way, people and communities, organizations, businesses that have a great impact on the structure and fabric of our, culture of Oak Harbor, while also allowing for those individual things that, I think we need to just globally figure out the ways in which to do scholarship at the greatest level versus scholarship at the very individual level, and have it be very particularized, because people resonate with different things.
Yeah.
But needing to be able to ask all those questions and provide avenues for it and express that there's a need for it too, so we can catch people who would rather donate in a bigger way but don't know that there's a vehicle for it.
Any further questions or comments on that item? Okay, seeing none, then we will move on to item E, which is the pickleball update.
Looks like I haven't seen Don jump on yet, so it looks like he was not able to make it on. We did meet with our athletic facilities committee with Don to review the 95% drawings for the pickleball courts. I will throw that up here. So some of the things we talked about were putting in seating post-construction. That would be done within the public common area there. We would not put in seating as was originally, I think, visualized when we were putting in the RFP. If you remember, we had cabana-type seating in between each of the courts. We ended up pulling that out of the RFP, but that's still something that we need to look at for seating for spectators. And so that's going to be done in that little avenue area outside of the courts post-construction. We also looked at a small pavilion in that area for registrations for organized activities, tournaments, things like that. Also talked about fencing for security, cameras, and then remote timer locks for the courts. Gives us some flexibility if we felt like the courts needed to be locked up at night outside of park hours or not. Also looked at a couple different solutions for a rebound wall and costs around those, as well as configuration of parking, and keeping in mind that parking and additional entry into that area is not part of this project with our RDW, but something that we will continue to look at and include in a future project. Any Shane or Eric, Tom, any comments from you guys as far as the update on the plans?
We talked briefly about the berm and what height that would be and how we would, not looking for the right word here, either put shrubs or trees or something up there to possibly serve as a sound barrier and a view barrier also. But there was no, everybody was in agreement. Probably should be, there should be some shrubs up there to help with the height of the berm.
We have a line of trees there, but yeah, that was something else we talked about, was adding additional trees along the fence line.
This gets a little bit into our subcommittee update, but we also spoke about just access to the, the accessible courts and where we were going to put that, what would need to be done to make that happen in, I think, the easiest way for those who would be the primary users of the accessibility functions of those courts. So that was a good conversation. And we also spoke in regards to what would it look like if we had to phase this project just based on grants and what flexibility there would be. And basically, working with Don, he's made it very easy to create that flexibility should we need it. Obviously, the lower cost of total is doing it all at once, but we don't always get what we want, first off, and the ideal sometimes doesn't exist. So we have that flexibility, and hopefully that will be a comfort to those who are looking for that in a project of this size and this scope, and especially for something that's new to our community.
Yeah, what Eric's talking about with the accessibility is we have handicap parking here. They're looking for a solution to bring those handicap stalls around the front of the vehicles rather than having them go into the parking lot to go around and access it. We have this bioswale here, and so they're looking at designs of that. And so we had conversations about how do we do that without having to reconfigure that bioswale too much, which might cause some stormwater permitting issues. So I'd say we're very close. RWD is working on getting these finalized with construction documents. We are still waiting to hear back from RCW, our RCO, on the grant allocation, at what level will be awarded for the community outdoor athletic field grant. And I think at that point, then we'll have some real conversations about implementation and timing and what funding, additional funding if needed, or if there's phasing of the project, kind of where we go from that. A lot of it's just dependent on what funding we get.
Okay. Do we have any other questions or comments? Okay. Did you need anything from us on that?
No, that's mostly just an update.
Okay. So then moving on to item G, subcommittee updates. Because of the holidays, we did not have a Parks and Playgrounds or a Programs and Events meeting. So we don't have any updates for those.
We did meet for facilities, so we have a little bit of update. A lot of our time was spent discussing what Brian just highlighted, so I won't really repeat on that. We did spend a little bit of time, I think, talking about Freedom Park and the design that's coming in there with the trails and then the disc golf course, and that's all moving ahead. I don't know if the city's yet received the GPS coordinates and all the markings for the disc golf course and the proposed trail. I've seen a rough of it, and there's a lot to be, like, there's a lot of space still left, I think, for the trail network too, in addition to what's already been just sketched out. So that's exciting as we're moving forward with that. Going to offer a lot of different recreation out there. I'm trying to think if there's anything else we missed in regards to that. I think Brian and Brandon were just figuring out, I think, the schedule for beginning some of the foundational work out there. And by foundational, I mean getting in some of the access trails and the place in which to put the equipment that's going to be used for on-site for building the beginnings of the trail network and moving to the disc golf course. So that's all exciting and moving forward and getting closer to activating that park for the community, which is exciting.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to item H, Parks and Recreation Director updates.
We did get an application for a student rep, Callie Boyer, and so Carrie and I will get on a call with her to do an interview, and then we'll invite her to the next commission meeting, at which point you guys can ask any questions or have a conversation and then make a motion if you'd like to appoint her onto the commission. Flintstone Park configuration, so we've gone over that in this commission. You guys made a motion of approval on one of the options. We've gone over that quite a bit. We're going to be taking that to council. We've had some public comment, mostly from the Gary Oaks Society, around desires to want to keep that lower parking lot. We'll probably present it in a way of here's what was discussed and approved by the commission, and then here we'll probably go over briefly some of the alternative layouts that we talked about, but give them an opportunity to give their feedback on that before we move forward and talk a little bit about cost. Most of the work's being done in-house. We have about $15,000 that are allocated to the project to take out the asphalt and then resod that, which is mostly what the project is. So it's pretty simple. But anytime there's a change, especially to a park, that's always a beloved space. People have a lot of feelings around it. So give them an opportunity for council and public to give more feedback on that. All member meeting will be January 30th. That's for 50 plus at the center. They'll be at 11:30 a.m. And the foundation has their meeting at that same time as well. We'll probably do a little bit of an update on here's what's going on in Parks and Recreation. You're all definitely invited to participate in that and give just to meet with the members and give any feedback to them. We also have, like Eric was saying, work happening at Freedom Park, preliminary trail clearing. Mostly it's getting rid of a lot of that underbrush growth. The trails will be primitive trails. We're not putting in any hardscape, but we are going to have a meeting with Development Services and Engineering tomorrow just to talk about that and make sure that there's no additional permitting that will be required for the work before we get too far into it. Kate Rose is going through some health issues right now, so she apologizes for missing the meetings. She'll get with Carrie on just updates on what's coming up. She is hoping to be back maybe next month, if not the month after that. But she would like to stay on the commission meeting, so our obviously our thoughts and well wishes go out to her. We'll just kind of keep you updated, but she's still holding in strong and trying to keep up to date on what's happening with the commission. You have any?
I would just add that our new activity guide is out. Have you guys seen it yet? Hopefully, but okay, good. U.S. Postal Service doing its thing and getting it to you. The highlights in there is that we have announced our summer camp registration won't begin until March, but we will be doing a youth summer camp this week. It's for 10 weeks, ages 5 to 14, so we're very excited about the addition to that, as well as some of our new sports. We're adding rugby. There's a Learn to Play rugby clinics that are starting this month, this weekend actually. This Saturday is the first clinic. We are looking for volunteers for both rugby and also our archery tag and our hockey for when the leagues start for coaches. So I know my husband has already graciously volunteered to coach street hockey because, voila, we have a daughter who loves street hockey. So anyone else, we are looking for volunteers, but we're also heavy into our recruitment right now of our part-time recreation leaders to help support these programs. And we've had some great interviews on Friday, have a couple more today and tomorrow, and we're just looking to fill those positions to ensure that these programs can move forward. So any help you can do with just sharing out the exciting things that are happening, the recreation programs with anyone that you think might be interested in and looking for those coaches, that would be excellent.
I will also just add real quick, we did meet with the Gary Oaks Society and went through their presentation last month, and there are a number of items that are asked as far as projects of the city, so we'll have more discussion in the committees about those. And timing what the city's participation in those will be.
Okay. Excellent, thank you. Just to clarify, you said the Flintstone Park reconfiguration will be presented to council on which day? Do we know?
It's planned for the first meeting in February.
I'm wondering if, in the interest of communicating to the public, could we make a post on social media that that presentation will be made at that meeting, so that people can come and comment during the public hearing, and maybe even I can reach out directly to some of the groups that might be interested in that. But if we could get it out on social media, I think that might be.
Yeah,
worth
we can
it.
definitely do it. The 4th, sorry,
Okay.
February 4th.
Okay, thank you. Okay, all right, moving on to member comments then. Did we have any other member comments?
I would like to just ask that you bombard us with emails. And I know that's sort of annoying, but I think there's a lot going on, and there's a lot that we sometimes either catch late or you ask us for permission in these meetings to whether we'd want to email on that. I would just say send the stuff. We can decide, we can self-select, if at what level we want to engage with it. Some of it might go straight to trash, but some of it we might really want to spend some time on it, either because we're passionate about it or we know the community is. So I think as y'all continue to grow and develop, with everything, I'd say spam us, or at least spam me, because I don't want to have to spend any time saying, yes, Liz, now will you send that to me? And then it's just one more thing you have to do when you were already sending out those emails to all the stakeholders, probably already while it was in conversation. Just add us to the list too. I think it makes things easier, and potentially it just prevents any last minute oopses, or where we have to sort of then, grab some information right before a meeting and then try to make decisions on it. So just send it, I would say. We can be most informed.
We can do that. If we do that, it would be by blind copy, and we'd ask you not to it'd be for informational purposes only.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Totally fine with that. I think
Just 'cause
everybody
we-
here wants to be as prepared as possible for when we actually have action items in here. So we know all this stuff, and then, again, it'll just help our meetings be more effective, I think, as well.
Yeah, we just can't reply to all because that would be a meeting technically.
Yeah, no, for us, it's just information.
Just for informational.
Just information. We're not having a conversation.
Yeah.
Just so we can put our brains around it and solve the problems that we're going to be faced with when these agenda items come up, or at least be usable to staff and council and the mayor.
Any other member comments? Go ahead.
I just kind of want to clarify on a comment that was made, or a question that was asked, and a comment that was made at the last meeting. So you had asked, Carrie, that was it council's intention the entire time to remove that roundabout at Flintstone Park? And I was part of the the Arts Commission meeting when we went down to Flintstone Park and the placement of the statue. So the intent was always to remove that roundabout portion of it. But at that time, the discussion was not to remove that lower parking lot. And so, just to clarify, yes, the intent was that roundabout, but not necessarily the parking lot itself. So my understanding at that particular time is that we would block it off, and then you would park there and still be able to go in and out there. So I just wanted to clarify, that was my understanding, at least as the member that was there and as a member of council.
Thank you for that. That's helpful. And I vaguely remember, that was 2 years ago now or something. So I think that the placement of the sculpture was based on that conversation, with the idea that people parking there could come in and out the same direction, but then now that is a problem, correct?
I mean, in my opinion, it's not a problem. We would just have to widen that area a little bit. And I guess the discussion, part of it was headlights into the buildings, right? And in my opinion, we could close that park at dusk, and then that alleviates that. But I do believe we would have to widen that entrance to get in and out.
Sure. Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah, and that was I think the original proposal, and yeah, we had some comments from Development Services on that. We talked about it in the committee meetings, and then we proposed some of the different options in the commission meetings, and you guys had, I think, 2 or 3 meetings going over those until you came to the current recommendation.
Okay, any other comments from the members? All right, determination of future agenda items. Anything at this time other than the fee schedule? Okay, I'm seeing none, so at this point, we will discuss the fee schedule, and if there's any additional website updates, maybe we can talk about that then, if it applies.
Yeah. Depending on the timing of Brandon returning,
Yeah.
we can also bring Adopt a Park
Sure.
back.
Okay. All right, well, with that, we will go ahead and adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everybody.